And I also went further internally within my own heart, of questioning life, questioning everything, dealing with my own thoughts, dealing with my own suicidal thoughts. I had desperation in my heart, desperation for happiness, desperation for longingness, desperation for belonging. There was a door that was closed halfway, and that day Jesus opened that door. And a lot of the time when I spend time with my young people do question a lot. Andy, why are you so joyful? Why do you live the way that you live? And just encountering those conversations with these young people is a great moment to share with them that it's only through Jesus that I live with that joy. That every day is a blessing. Every day I get to live with the joy knowing that Jesus died for me and that he is now living within me. I didn't always live a life of happiness. I didn't grow up in a Catholic household, I didn't grow up in a believing household, I grew up in an atheist household. So this sense of happiness that I searched for, I searched for it in external. I looked for happiness in other ways. I came from quite a broken background and quite a poor background, where alcohol was very present within my household through brokenness of my own family. Whilst in school, I searched for happiness, I searched for a sense of belonging. And it took quite a while to find that. And I wasn't a great child in school, I wasn't really bad. But there was moments in school where I really believed that any attention is good attention. At home, I never really felt happiness. I never really felt joy, I never really understood what that was. So I searched for it in ways at school. So when thinking in my own mind that any attention's good attention, in school I became a bit mischievous. I'd play around quite a lot in lessons. I was kicked out from quite a lot of lessons, but I also wasn't the smartest of children. And it made me feel like quite a lot that I never really had much worth. I didn't really have a belonging. I wasn't really good at anything. There was moments throughout school where I'd got myself involved with the wrong crowd. Getting involved with drinking from such an early age. Drinking then led to the drugs. And everything that I did from that moment was to suppress everything that was going on in my own life. I put a facade on to the world. I spend weekends, every single weekend, out with friends, trying to live what I thought was a normal life. Drinking from an early age, spending nights at the park, late nights at the park, drinking and drinking and drinking. I thought that's all I had. I thought that's all I could do. It was the only option I had to suppress the struggles that I was going through as a young man. Eventually that turned to the drugs. That turned to smoking weed with the friends, spending nights, spending days, smoking, drinking, trying to suppress everything, putting on a great facade for my friends that they knew nothing, that they thought I was just a part of one of them. They thought I was just one of the group doing the things that we do as normal teenagers. But little did they know, it was all just a facade for me. It was all just a way to suppress everything that I was feeling. The struggles, the suicidal thoughts, the loneliness, the neglect. There was one particular moment in school which I believe changed my life forever. That moment was when I was suffering with depression and suicidal thoughts in school. I was welcomed by my school chaplain at the time, and my school chaplain invited me on a school retreat up in a beautiful Benedictine monastery called Ampleforth Abbey. And at Ampleforth Abbey, I really didn't like being there, I really didn't like being on retreat. But she told us in one of the evenings that we could go and spend time with the monks, and that we could go and pray early hours of the morning. That night, I didn't sleep. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to carry on sitting here in bed. I got myself up. I went downstairs to go and meet the rest of the people that were on their way over to the Abbey. They'd left. So I had to find my own way to the Abbey that day. It was really early morning. I got to the Abbey and I sat there and I thought to myself, this is awful. I'm surrounded by what I thought were a bunch of weird men dressed in black gowns. But I was forced into a situation within my own heart where I had to be silent. It was my first time in life where I'd experienced this kind of silence. I didn't understand anything that was going on, everything was in Latin. So I thought to myself, well, I'm in silence now. I'm going to sit here in silence. And I also went further internally within my own heart of questioning life, questioning everything, dealing with my own thoughts, dealing with my own suicidal thoughts. So I had desperation in my heart, desperation for happiness, desperation for longingness, desperation for belonging. There was a weird feeling that I had within my heart, and that feeling was, Jesus, if you are real, you either change my life or I will take my life. From that point, I knew I had everything planned out. I knew the day I was going to take my life. I knew the place I was going to go take my life. And it was soon after that retreat, actually. Whilst being on that retreat, in that moment in prayer, when I asked that question, nothing spectacular happened. I didn't have a shift of heart. I didn't have a shift of mindset. But what I did find was this silence. The retreat flowed. I went home after the retreat had ended. And I got home and I found what I felt by coincidence, that my dad had stopped drinking. My dad stopped drinking alcohol. Usually my dad during the week on a Wednesday, he would go out drinking. He'd go out to play snooker, go out to play cribbage with his mates, and sometimes come home really, really drunk. As the weeks went by, my dad stopped drinking. I was confused, and I thought, well, this could just be a coincidence. This means nothing. So I carried on the way that I was going in school. I carried on the way that I was going in life. Weeks after this retreat, when I went back to school, there was one particular girl who was in all my classes. She was a bit of an easy target, and I thought to myself, here we go, I can get that attention that I've always wanted from my family. Any attention's good attention, is what I thought. We left school. There was a rugby field across from my school, and it was passing through into my housing estate. So we thought it'd be a smart idea to chase this girl through the field. The problem was, I had a lighter and my friend had a deodorant can. So we chased her through the field, creating our own little flamethrower with a deodorant can and lighter. The following day, we were back at school, everything was as normal. I thought nothing of it. My teacher had received a message from the head office, and I was marched down to the head teacher. For some reason that day, the head teacher only kicked me out of school. Not anybody else involved, but she kicked me out. And I believe there's a reason for this. I was kicked out and I was put into an off-site unit, and that's quite a place where you'd go when you've been removed from school to work in silence and just do your work, and you're away from every other student. That same night when I was in this off-site unit, I was on my way to the shop. And whilst on my way to the shop, I spotted this girl across the road. So at this point, I thought to myself, I've got her. I'm gonna take out all my revenge on this person for what I thought snitching. She snitched on me and she got me kicked out of school, which is so counterproductive to the mindset that I had as a young person, that any attention's good attention. The moment I crossed the road to go and just get my revenge on this girl, I was hit by a car. And whilst I was hit by a car, I found myself trapped underneath the wheel. My foot was trapped, so I blacked out. My body went into shutdown mode. The only thing I remember from this day was that when waking up in my blackout, there was one person that was holding me, and it was this girl. I thought to myself, I've made your life a living hell. I'm searching for my own belonging, searching for my own happiness, and you have become a victim in this. How can you hold me in this moment? Why would you hold me in this moment? Surely you'd leave me at the roadside. And I remember opening my eyes, looking up at her, and I thought, I am loved. Nothing that I can do in my life will ever take away that I am loved. You didn't need to hold me. You could have left me on the roadside. After all, I just chased you through a field with our own home makeshift flamethrower. And yet you hold me. And this was a real pinnacle moment for me. A moment that I found true happiness. That for the first time I thought to myself, I am loved. From that day, once again, nothing much changed. I had this feeling in my heart that I was loved. I had this feeling in my heart that I belonged, that my life had worth. But I still carried on the way that I was going. I was still suffering with my own internal thoughts. I went back to school. My school accepted me back in. And I spoke with our high school chaplain. For some reason, our high school chaplain didn't give up on me. She carried on welcoming me in. And in that welcoming me in to the chaplaincy, to any events, I found that I had a place that I belonged. It didn't matter what was going on in life. And she truly led me to a relationship with Christ. It wasn't about the books. It wasn't about the reading. It was about an encounter. It was about Jesus showing himself that he had a plan for my life. So my chaplain further took me, and she took me to a trip to Africa with a group of friends. And in Africa, I found a moment where I looked at these young people who felt like they didn't have much of a life, who were struggling in life. I had my own struggles. And yet, they still had a desire for life. They still had joy. My chaplain helped me to explore that. She encouraged me at the end of my year in school, when I was turning 18, to take a year out. Don't go to university, take a year out. So I took a year out in a Catholic retreat centre in the north of England. And this was the place where God had started to move in my life, started to reveal who I am to him, started to speak to me through people, started to reveal himself to me through the Eucharist. After that year, I moved to Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, that's where I learnt to be a Catholic. There was a moment I had in Ireland. And this moment was, I was spending time in an all-boys school, and I was telling these lads about my experiences that I had as a teenager. And I saw these lads become closer to Christ through the story that I was sharing. Throughout my teen years, I never really thought I had much worth. I wasn't really good at school. I wasn't good at academics. I didn't really know what I was good at. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know the purpose for my life. But this moment with these teenage boys, I found a purpose for my life. That sharing my own encounters with Christ started to change lives. People started to come to Christ. People found belonging. People found happiness. People found moments that they could look internally in the way that Jesus wants to move in their life. From that day, I knew the purpose for my life. So I carried on in ministry. I carried on serving Christ by leading young people to Christ. And that leads us further on down the line, where I carried on taking more gap years. I carried on taking more years in different retreat centres around England, because I just wanted young people to have the same encounter that I had with Jesus. I saw lots of young people come to Christ. Lots of young people deal with their own internal battles and still find wholeness in Christ. And that is the joy that I get to live today. The joy that I know that is the rest of my life, that is the purpose for my life, the plan that Jesus has for my life. I can't do it without Jesus. Jesus is my everything, and it is a joy to be able to stand in front of young people and tell them about Jesus. Tell them about the way that Jesus can heal us, the way that Jesus wants to speak to us. Throughout my life, there was a lot of struggle at home, a struggle in poverty. We didn't have much. We didn't grow up with much. Life was a bit of a struggle financially. That had its strains in my life where I'd found myself at school looking at other young people, looking at other people in my classes who I knew had money. I'd go to their houses, play football with them. And I felt abandoned in life. I felt that I don't have what you have, and you're so happy in comparison to me. I didn't know what's going on in their life. I don't know their internals, but that's what I felt. So I hid everything away from them. No one really knew of the struggles that were going on at home. I remember a moment that I had in my first gap year where I came home and I felt on my heart to ask my dad why. Why did you drink so much? Why was there so much pain and hurt there? My dad explained his story, his situation of why. He told me that when he was a young man, he had an argument with his mum, and like every child in an argument, we freak out. He storms out the room, he slams the door, shouts at his mum and tells her he wishes she was dead. Forgetting that the next day she was on an operation table for something that was going on with her. That day she died on the operation table. And for the rest of his life he blamed himself. He thought it was his fault. He thought that he killed his mum. And that is what led him to the situations, to his own brokenness, dealing with himself. So he turned to alcohol, and he couldn't shake it. I realised that day when I had that conversation with my dad, that you know what, I would have done the same. If I was in that same position, I would have done the same. I'd have lived with such brokenness. So I understood. I understood that things get passed down the line when we are broken. That unfortunately, those struggles pass down from my father, down from my mother. But I know that Jesus acted in ways that I could never have imagined. There was a moment after Unbound, I was in bed at night. The memories for a moment came flooding back. But Jesus brought something to my heart. He made me realise something. I didn't take my life because Jesus wanted my life. Jesus wants me to live. Now I know from my work in youth ministry that there's so many young people searching, so many young people who are broken from so many different backgrounds. Within spending time with my young people, I noticed quite a lot that our young people are constantly searching for this happiness that they want of life. And it's a great honour to be standing before them just explaining that actually every day is a blessing, and that when we are searching for this happiness, that when we encounter Christ, He is the only one that will bring fulfillment into our hearts, that He is the only one that will truly make us happy, truly make us people that we're created to be. There was one big problem for me at U2000, and that was Jesus in the Eucharist is at the centre of the room 24/7. Everywhere I went, Jesus was looking at me. So everywhere I went, I saw Jesus. And I knew Jesus was waiting in anticipation for me to come before Him. I took a moment in one of the evenings. Everyone else was in dinner. I came before the Lord, and I knelt there, and Jesus revealed Himself to me in the Eucharist. He showed me the family that I had around me. It was a moment that today will always live with me. There is hundreds of people just like me, hundreds of young adults, religious, priests, those in seminary. They were all here in one space. Jesus was revealing to me in that moment that I had a place where I belonged. There was a door that was closed halfway, and that day Jesus opened that door. He smashed that door apart. That now, everything that I'd learned, everything that I'd experienced, it was not only from the mind. I wasn't living from my mind anymore. I was living from the heart. That Jesus heals and Jesus saved me. Jesus saved my life.
"10 years of sharing the peace of Christ." Shalom World, God's own channel.